So what we're going to talk about today is tips to help you align and install trunk lids or hoods or doors on muscle cars or old trucks or whatever. This is just what I've been doing for a long time. I didn't invent this technique. I've heard of it before, but I do it all the time, and if you don't know about it, this will help you a lot. All right, so when you want to do this is when, especially if you're working in a small shop by yourself, you want to use this when you get all your body panels, in this case a trunk lid, or also doors or whatever, kind of getting your gaps adjusted out. This one isn't done. I haven't got the gaps, just doing a rough trial fit on this, but anyways, when you get your panels to where you want them to fit, when you're doing your pre-assembly, basically before you blow the car apart to paint it, your fear is you get the door or the trunk lid or hood fit exactly how you want, and then you take it off, you paint it, you go to put it back together, and you scratch it. So that's a huge concern for anybody that's ever done body work to a car, shop owner like me, or just an amateur, or even a professional that just does it for fun at home. What it also is going to help with is, in the case of what I'm dealing with here, I've got to make a bunch of modifications to the edge of this trunk lid. Got to take off a bunch of metal, like here. I got to weld on some metal. Same thing on the other side. And I want to know that while I'm taking this off, putting it back on, that it's going to fit exactly the same as far as the trunk lid in relation to the body. I want to make sure that every time I put it on there, it's lined up across the back. My gaps are consistent all the way around. So this is why I do this. So I'm going to set you up on a stand and give you 2 tips that'll help you quite a bit in aligning everything up after you paint it and while you're working on it. All right, so when you're working on your car or truck, you get everything adjusted, everything fits good, your panels, your gaps are okay. How do you keep from damaging the paint when you put it back together, and how do you know every time you put it back on there that it's going to be exactly where it was before when you're making adjustments? And I do it with 1/8 inch roll pins. Now, this is not something you may want to do if you're restoring a numbers matching 100% correct car, concours. But if you're just building a car that is a really good quality driver, or you just want it to be right, this is a really good technique for getting stuff back in place. I've got another car I'm doing right now where I've got the gap around the trunk lid and the doors and everything down to 1/8 of an inch. And if you're painting all your panels apart and you're putting the car back together, it's extremely difficult to fit a trunk lid or door or whatever and not chip the paint when your gap is that tight. So I do it. It's not detectable when the car's done. I'm just showing you how to do it on a trunk lid, but the basic idea is the same. About the only thing that's different is where you would weld the roll pin. If you're doing it on a door or hinge, usually I'll weld the roll pin to the car body. In this case, I'm going to weld the roll pin to the hinge itself. So I'll do that in just a second, but first little tip I want to give you is when you first go to stick this back on here, when you're doing like your initial fit work, I put tape around the outside edge where I get it kind of where I want. Just a mark, just a reference point to put that back. But I also take a bolt, this one being a 5/16. I take a longer bolt and I'll cut it down basically just like this, essentially a stud. And what I'll do is in one of the bolt holes, usually the bottom, just because it's easier, turn it around, I'll just thread that in there, and what that'll allow you to do is when you take this off, especially by yourself, which I don't really recommend. When you put it back on, you just run the stud right through the hole. This works on anything with hinges, hoods, works really well. You just run, it'll get you within 3/8 of an inch of where the bolt needs to be, and it'll keep you from whacking your paint right here. But you just use that, just get your other bolt snug. That's tip number 1. Just super cheap, super easy. Anyway, so next step, and most importantly, I've got this trunk lid fit where it fits the perimeter real well, lines up on the back. I've got to grind down some metal. I got to add some metal with the welder all the way around this. And when you're doing that, I'll be working the perimeter here and on the other side. I want to make sure when I put it back together, it's in the same spot. So, show you what I'm working with. As you already saw, 1/8 inch roll pins. These are the 1 inch ones. I like these the best lengthwise. I'm working with an 1/8 inch drill bit, which is same diameter as that pin. Then I've got a 9/64 drill bit, which is just barely bigger than that 1/8. So first step, on a driver quality car that's got your average 3/8, a little bit smaller than 3/8 body gap, you can get away with 1 pin just fine. On something that I'm really wanting gapped out perfect, I can put pin here, but for this case, this one right in the center is going to be fine. All right, so I've cleaned my metal. I've got this pretty much exactly where I want it to be. I've got a good weldable surface there. I'm going to chuck up my 1/8 inch drill bit. I am going to weld this dude in. I'm going to drill it. Okay, so I'm going to drill my hole 1/8 inch. I'm going to go through both pieces. And I'm going to be very careful not to punch through the top skin. Alright. Okay, so off camera, took the trunk lid off. I've got my pilot hole drilled. I'm going to take my roll pin. I'm going to clean the end of it just a little bit. Just get it down to bare metal. Like so. I'm going to insert the roll pin into the hole. Try to get it as straight as I can, lined up with how the hole was drilled. It's pretty important that it's lined up good. To an extent, it'll self-center a little bit, but you don't want to have it way far off. It needs to be pretty close to flush. Now I'm going to weld it. And make sure it gets pretty warm. Cool off for a second. Shoot the back side. I can see this little moon there. Got the fan blowing on me, so it's messing with my shielding gas a little bit. Alright, I'm going to dress down the weld. Alright. Okay, now you can't see this as good as I can, but it's indetectable. You can't see it. There's no evidence of it on the backside. of this. So this would work on a concours car or whatever. You're not going to see it, not when the car is assembled. So I'm going to tell you this: when your trunk lid or your hood is still on, do not weld your pin in, because your hole on your deck lid is the same size as the roll pin, and these roll pins are a little brittle, especially after you heat them up with a welder. So you have to drill your hole, take your panel off, set your pin in there, make sure that it's straight and centered as best as you can, weld it up. If you weld this up with the lid still on it, and you try to take the lid off, it's going to be such a tight fit, you're probably going to snap the roll pin or bend it. Usually they'll just break, and you'll be doing it again. So you have to have your panel off. So I've got my panel over there. I'll take you over there and show you the last step. This is the last step. I've got my hole drilled right here. It's a 1/8 inch hole. I'm going to get my 9/64 drill bit, and I'm going to drill through that. What this will do, it will allow the roll pin to fit in this hole without snapping off. Now, I highly recommend that you have at least one helper help you do this. You don't break these roll pins, they're fairly fragile. Alright. So your roll pin will easily slide right into there, but when you're fitting your trunk lid on your panel, you got to make sure you're not going at it crooked like this. If you side load that pin, it'll snap. You can also take this roll pin that's welded to your hinge, and you can cut it down to where it's 1/2 inch or whatever length, 3/8 of an inch. That helps a lot if you're trying to do this by yourself or whatever. You will break the roll pin if you bend it or kink it in the hinge. So after you drill this, you can very carefully fit it back on the car, which I'll show you in just a second, and it'll be perfectly lined up. As you can see, we got a roll pin here. Like I said, if you want to, before you install them, you can cut them down 1/2 inch. You can cut them also after they're installed, but it's a little more difficult, the hinge bouncing around and stuff. But I don't have any problem with them being this way. I don't have somebody else here to help me do this, so I'm just going to kind of show you how to do it without actually taking a chance of hurting anything. You very, very carefully get the thing squared up. Like I said, these will snap if you're not careful. Put your bolt in loose. Just snug it up tight where it's not going to side load that pin. That'll keep it from bending. And find the other bolt. Here it is. Just going to run these in both where they're just touching flush. Should have took my gloves off. Okay, these are just snug enough, it's not going to do this. I'm going to go do that side real quick, and then we'll just square that bracket up, tighten it up, and be done. Okay, repeat the same thing over here, get them in here loose. I'm just at the rough metalwork stage. There's no Bondo on this car or this trunk lid. I've got to completely rework the edges on this and got a lot of work to do. I definitely, under no circumstances, would try to do this installation by myself if the pieces were painted or given in the final primer. So, as you can tell, these are finger loose. I mean, this thing is just dead nut exactly where it was before. So, just snug it up. And it will perfectly center your hinge to the car every single time. It'll be dead center exactly where it was. Take it off, put it back on 50 times, still be in the same place. All right, so I apologize in advance for that being a little choppy. I was trying to do 15 different things and wife interrupted me and dog interrupted me. Anyways, and if you're one of the keyboard warriors that want to talk trash about everybody, and you think I'm an idiot, please drop a comment and tell me that I am, because every comment will help the channel grow. So even if you hate it, comment anyways. Helps my channel grow, helps me get subscribers and get the word out there. Thank you.